In this module, we're going to take a look at our second E of modern work culture, engagement. Now, we define employee engagement as the extent to which an employee is committed to their work and feels a psychological attachment to their organization. Now, unfortunately, even before the pandemic arrived, employees all over the world were already experiencing an engagement epidemic. Globally, only 15% of employees identify as being actively engaged in the work that they're doing. But interestingly, this isn't anything too new. Studies over the past 20 years of engagement trends show that there really isn't much change. People become slightly more engaged, slightly less engaged. But this isn't really the point. It's unlikely that we'll ever achieve full engagement in the workplace. The key takeaway here is that engagement is not dependent on where work is done. But how can managers better engage their employees during a time like this? Well, we know that 70% of employee engagement is impacted by managers. And I would say that that number is even higher in a virtual setting, as managers have come to be that really supportive kind of system for their teams in this virtual world. This also has to do with the fact that the nature of the modern manager and modern employee relationship is very different today. It's a lot more open and a lot more personal than what it used to be. But today's most engaged teams are led by resilient, flexible, and empathetic managers. Managers who really understand who their employees are, from their working styles to how they prefer to communicate, and even how they approach solving problems. Now, interestingly enough, Trend Hunter's Innovation Assessment is a tool that can answer those very questions. We use the assessment to identify the different traits of professionals all across the world, how they prefer to communicate, and how we can optimize their working styles. Now, our innovation assessment evaluates both individuals and teams on 6 key traits, and we divide these into 2 groups. We have the farmer traits on the left and the hunter traits on the right. Now, someone who is assigned the hunter mindset. This is an individual who is more likely to thrive in chaos. They are very action-oriented, they like to move very quickly, and they're highly adaptable. Hunters were probably very thrilled when it came time to change up their work environment and transition to home. But since then, there is a good chance that they have actually become more restless and they might actually already be looking for their next opportunity. Now, on the other side of the coin, we have farmers. Now, someone who is assigned a farmer mindset, they are definitely not a huge fan of change, especially when that change comes out of nowhere. They really like to strategize and plan ahead. They're very organized, they're very diligent, and of course, they're highly disciplined. And they're always looking to find ways that they can optimize everything they're doing. Now, the farmers, they were probably not thrilled when we had to suddenly pack up and head home. But since then, they have likely created their own routines and rituals, which are helping them thrive in this environment. Now, another key aspect when it comes to engagement is all about the structure and clarity that managers can provide for their employees. According to our assessment, 61% of employees prefer clearly outlined expectations and objectives, and that number has actually gone up during the course of the pandemic. Now, for those individuals who actually prefer less structure and more flexibility from their managers, well, we've actually seen that number go down over the past year. By really reiterating priorities and providing that clarity and structure, managers can very much so have a positive impact when it comes to employee engagement. In the Insight Remote support, we see a variety of new tools, platforms, and programs that have emerged over the course of the past year. These platforms are allowing managers to stay better connected and aligned with their teams in this virtual setting. Ultimately, though, at the end of the day, employees are going to be more engaged when they know that their managers prioritize compassion and seeing them as actual people, as opposed to productivity. This is absolutely crucial as we're still navigating these stressful times. Now, speaking of managers today are doing it all. They're jumping through hoops by trying to keep their own work organized, but also trying to keep their team organized as well. and they absolutely need support from leadership. This is key, especially when it comes to transparent communication. Studies show that an employee is 12 times more engaged if they trust their leadership team. Now, you can build that trust through communication that is consistent, centralized, and clear. One example of a CEO who has done an amazing job throughout the pandemic in leading his team is Stuart Butterfield. He is the CEO of Slack. Now, when the pandemic arrived and so many organizations and leaders were scrambling, Stuart was very clear with his employees. He let them know that their needs, whether it be their family or personal, came first before their work duties. And he made that absolutely clear and made sure that their team knew that they were not meant to be stressing about what was going on and that they should focus on themselves. In other positive news, 88% of employees have agreed that the frequency of communication from leaders throughout the past year has been effective. This is absolutely critical as the pandemic had forced so many organizations to pivot their strategies. And in order to actually execute those strategies, their employees had to know what was going on. There was really a sense of urgency. But leaders who resisted the command and control approach actually saw more engagement and success during this time. So when it comes to maintaining engagement in the recharted workplace, remember that managers will continue to have the greatest impact with your employees and they require additional support. Really lean into your employees' expertise and strength during this time. It's a great way to crowdsource those out-of-the-box ideas and really get the most out of them and provide them with that purpose. And of course, prioritize resiliency over efficiency. This will benefit you much more in the long run. And that wraps up our module on engagement. A homework question for you to consider. How can you give employees more autonomy when it comes to achieving organizational goals?